Varalian ships appeared in Earth's solar system without warning. They looked like giant crystals floating through space, reflecting the light of the sun in beautiful but threatening ways. Earth scientists had been searching for alien life for centuries, but no one expected first contact to be an invasion. Admiral Jack Harris of the Earth Defense Fleet looked at the main screen of his command center with worry in his eyes. His best ships were no match for these alien vessels. The fleet's most powerful weapons barely scratched the crystal surface of the smallest Varalian scout ships. "What do we know about them?" Jack asked his intelligence officer. Lieutenant Susan Rogers handed him a tablet. "They call themselves the Varalian Empire. From what we can tell, they've conquered 12 other planets in nearby star systems. Their technology is at least 100 years ahead of ours." Jack rubbed his forehead. Humanity had only established colonies on Mars and the Moon. They weren't ready for a war with an advanced alien empire. "They've demanded our surrender," Susan continued. "They expect an answer in 24 hours. The Defense Council meeting that followed was tense. Some leaders wanted to surrender, hoping the aliens would treat Earth kindly. Others wanted to fight until the last human fell. Commander Alec Daniels, one of Jack's best officers, had a different idea. "We need to fight, but not the way they expect," Alec explained. "We've analyzed their battle patterns. The Varalians follow strict rules of engagement. Their tactics never change. They don't adapt well to surprises." The Earth Defense Fleet decided to make a stand in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It wasn't an ideal battlefield, but the floating rocks might give the human ships places to hide and maneuver. 20 Earth ships faced off against 8 of the crystal Varalian vessels. Lieutenant Grace Miller sat at the weapons control station of the EDF Defender, one of Earth's best warships. She had trained for years to operate the ship's laser cannons and missile systems. But when the battle began, those systems didn't last long. The Varalian ships fired beams of bright green energy that cut through the Earth ships like they were made of paper. Within minutes, half of the human fleet was damaged or destroyed. "Weapons offline," Grace shouted as her control panel sparked and went dark. "Communications jammed." Captain Henry Woods, commander of the Defender, looked around the damaged bridge. Smoke filled the air and warning lights flashed everywhere. "Options, people, I need options." The ship shook as another near miss from a Varalian weapon rocked the vessel. They were hiding behind a large asteroid, but it wouldn't protect them for long. Grace stared at her dead weapons panel, then at the emergency systems that still worked. An idea formed in her mind. It was crazy, but they had nothing to lose. "Captain, I need 5 minutes and access to the mess hall," she said. Captain Woods looked at her like she had lost her mind, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "You have 3 minutes, Lieutenant." Grace ran through the damaged corridors of the ship. When she reached the mess hall, she went straight for the industrial coffee maker. The Defender had a crew of 200 people, and they all needed their coffee. The machine was large and powered by the ship's auxiliary systems. Working quickly, Grace disconnected the coffee maker and dragged it back to the bridge with the help of 2 engineers. They connected it to the power systems where the weapons used to be. "What exactly are you doing, Lieutenant?" Captain Woods asked as Grace filled the coffee maker's reservoir with water and dumped 3 large containers of coffee grounds into it. "Something the Varalians won't expect," she replied, making adjustments to the power flow. "Their ships are made of some kind of crystal. Crystals conduct energy, and they're right next to us, not expecting us to have any weapons left." Grace rewired the coffee maker to bypass all safety systems. The machine began to vibrate and heat up beyond its normal limits. "Everyone hold on to something," she shouted as she aimed the coffee machine's output nozzle toward the outer hull and activated the emergency hull vent system for that section. The pressure inside the coffee maker built up to dangerous levels. When Grace hit the final button, the machine exploded in a controlled way, sending superheated steam and electrically charged coffee grounds through the vent and into space. The cloud of particles spread quickly, surrounding the nearest Varalian ship. The hot, wet, conductive coffee grounds stuck to the crystal surface of the alien vessel. The electrical charge in the particles created small short circuits across the ship's sensor arrays and weapon systems. On the bridge of the Defender, everyone watched the main screen in amazement. The Varalian ship's crystal surface flickered with small electrical discharges. "Their sensors are blind," the scan operator announced. They're not moving. Captain Woods didn't waste the opportunity. All hands, prepare for emergency jump. Alert, all remaining Earth ships to follow our lead. The Defender and the remaining Earth vessels used the confusion to escape deeper into the asteroid belt. They would live to fight another day. On the main Varalian command ship, Admiral Zextora received the battle report with disbelief. What do you mean they used a drink maker as a weapon? The Admiral demanded. The Varalian officer looked confused. Our analysts are certain, Admiral. The humans converted a device for making beverages into an improvised electrical disruptor. It should not have been possible according to proper military doctrine. Zextora's crystal face showed no emotion, but inside the Admiral felt something new. Doubt. In thousands of years of Varalian military history, no species had ever repurposed civilian equipment into weapons during the middle of battle. Tools had specific purposes. Weapons were weapons. Food makers were food makers. That was the proper order of things. Find these humans, Zextora ordered. They escaped this time through luck and trickery. It will not happen again. The Admiral was wrong. This was just the beginning of humanity's creative resistance. The Varalians would soon learn that in human hands, anything could become a weapon. A lesson that would change the course of the war and shake the foundation of the mighty Varalian Empire to its core. News of Lieutenant Grace Miller's coffee weapon spread quickly through Earth's forces. Some laughed at the story, but the military leaders paid close attention. If a coffee maker could disable an advanced alien ship, what else could humans turn into unexpected weapons? Commander Alec Daniels began collecting reports of similar improvised tactics from other surviving ships. One captain had used food oil from the kitchen to make the floor slippery when Varalian boarding parties entered their ship. Another had reprogrammed cleaning robots to attack alien invaders. The Varalians expect us to fight a certain way, Alec explained during an emergency meeting with Earth's Defense Council. They don't understand adaptation and improvisation. We need to use that against them. And so began humanity's unusual resistance against an enemy that couldn't comprehend why humans refused to use only proper weapons in proper ways. The Varalians would learn that humans could turn anything into a weapon when survival was at stake. It was a lesson that would cost the alien empire dearly. 6 months passed since the first battle against the Varalian Empire. Earth's military forces were running low on weapons, ships, and hope. The aliens had established bases on Pluto and several large asteroids. They were slowly moving closer to Earth, destroying any resistance they met. Major Samantha Powell sat in a small room at the underground military headquarters in Colorado. Maps and battle reports covered the walls. None of them showed good news. Earth had lost 70% of its space fleet. The remaining ships didn't have enough weapons or fuel for a long fight. We can't win using normal tactics, Samantha said to the group of officers around the table. The Varalians are too strong, too advanced. Colonel Richard Benson shook his head. Then we surrender. Let them take our planet? No, Samantha replied, standing up. We change how we fight. We've noticed something about the Varalians in every battle. They don't adapt well to surprises. Remember Lieutenant Miller's coffee maker trick? That one improvised weapon helped our ships escape a hopeless battle. She pointed to reports on the wall. Since then, we've seen more examples. The defense of the Mars colony used farming equipment converted into weapons. The lunar base attack was stopped because someone turned a mining drill into a tank. The officers looked interested but doubtful. I want to form a new unit, Samantha continued. Not soldiers, but people who understand how things work. Chefs, janitors, mechanics, engineers. People who can look at everyday objects and see new purposes for them. Colonel Benson frowned. You want to fight an alien empire with cooks and cleaners? Samantha smiled. I want to fight an advanced enemy with something they don't understand. Human creativity. 2 weeks later, the Kitchen Battalion was born. They didn't look like soldiers. They didn't train like soldiers. But they might be humanity's best hope. Chef Kevin Rodriguez had worked in a 5-star restaurant before the war. Now he stood, In a large warehouse filled with flour, sugar, and other cooking supplies. Flour seems harmless, Kevin told his team of cooks and bakers. But when it's in the air as tiny particles, it becomes explosive. He demonstrated by blowing a small amount of flour over a candle. The flour burst into flames with a loud whoosh. The Varalians breathe something like oxygen, Kevin explained. Their ships and suits filter the air, but they're not designed to handle this. We're going to create flour bombs that can disable their troops without destroying everything around them. Across the warehouse, Frank Martinez was working with cleaning supplies. Before the war, he had been the head custodian at a major university. He knew everything about cleaning chemicals and how they worked on different surfaces. These aliens have crystal-based armor, Frank explained to his group. Crystals have a specific molecular structure. The right cleaning solution can weaken that structure over time. He dipped a small crystal into a bucket of his special cleaning mix. After a few minutes, the crystal became cloudy and started to crack. We spray this on their armor, Frank said, and within minutes their protection starts to fail. Major Powell watched these training sessions with growing hope. The Varalians expected to face guns, tanks, and missiles. They wouldn't be prepared for flour bombs and cleaning sprays. The first test of the kitchen battalion came 3 weeks later. A small group of Varalian scouts landed in the forests of northern Canada, looking for resources. A team of 20 humans led by Samantha Powell went to meet them. The Varalians moved through the forest in a perfect formation. Their crystal armor shined in the sunlight. They carried energy weapons that could burn through metal. They looked unstoppable. The human team waited until the aliens reached a small clearing. Frank Martinez was the first to act. Using modified garden sprayers strapped to their backs, his team sprayed the special cleaning solution into the air around the Varalians. The aliens didn't notice anything at first. The spray was almost invisible and had no smell. They continued their march, unaware that their armor was slowly weakening. Next came Kevin Rodriguez and his flour team. They used small leaf blowers modified to spread fine baker's flour into the air. The white cloud surrounded the Varalian troops. One of the aliens fired its energy weapon at a suspicious movement. The energy beam hit the flour-filled air and ignited it instantly. A massive fireball engulfed the clearing. The explosion wasn't strong enough to kill the Varalians, but it disabled their helmet systems and cracked their weakened armor. The final attack came from Jane Austen, a former car mechanic. Her team had modified ordinary garden tools. They carried hedge trimmers powered by car batteries, capable of cutting through the damaged crystal armor. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. The Varalian scouts never had a chance to call for help. They couldn't understand how humans with gardening tools and cooking ingredients had defeated advanced alien warriors. Major Powell's team captured 2 injured Varalians and valuable alien technology. More importantly, they proved that the kitchen battalion concept worked. News of the victory spread quickly. Similar units began forming all over the world. People donated kitchen appliances, gardening tools, and cleaning supplies to the war effort. Engineers and mechanics worked with chefs and janitors to create new types of improvised weapons. On the main Varalian command ship, Admiral Zexus Tora received the report of the lost scout team with growing concern. They were attacked with what? The admiral asked. The intelligence officer checked the report again. Our translation may be incorrect, Admiral, but it appears they were defeated using food dust, cleaning liquids, and plant-cutting tools. Admiral, Zexatora's crystal face showed no emotion, but the admiral's voice revealed frustration. These humans don't fight properly. It is disturbing. The Varalian military had strict rules about weapons. Every soldier trained with specific equipment designed for war. The idea of using cooking ingredients or gardening tools as weapons made no sense to them. It wasn't just unusual. It was wrong. Order all ground forces to be more careful, the admiral commanded. These humans are unpredictable. Back on Earth, Major Samantha Powell met with Earth's defense leaders. The success of the kitchen battalion had exceeded everyone's expectations. The Varalians are confused by our tactics, Samantha explained. They don't understand improvisation. Their society is built on order and rules. Everything has one purpose and one use. Colonel Benson, once doubtful, now supported the program fully. How do we expand this strategy? We recruit more civilians with specialized knowledge, Samantha replied. Chefs, mechanics, farmers, anyone who understands tools and materials. Then we let them get creative. Within months, thousands of people joined the unconventional warfare units. The kitchen battalion was just the beginning. Soon there were garage gangs, garden groups, and office supply operators. Regular people turned everyday objects into weapons that confused and frightened the alien invaders. The Varalians still had better technology and more ships, but for the first time since the war began, humans had found a way to fight back that gave them a real advantage. The alien invaders began to fear these unpredictable defenses more than standard military equipment. The war was far from over, but humanity had found its unique strength, the ability to see a weapon in anything when survival was at stake. The war with the Varalian Empire entered its second year. Earth had suffered many losses, but humanity was still fighting. The kitchen battalion and other improvised warfare units had slowed down the alien advance. Now humans needed to find a way to push the Varalians back. Dr. Olivia Wright had been a psychologist before the war. She had studied how people think and why they behave certain ways. Now she was using that knowledge to understand the alien enemy. The Varalians don't just fight differently than we do, Olivia explained during a meeting with military leaders. They think differently. Their entire society is based on order and rules. She showed pictures of captured Varalian equipment. Every tool was perfectly designed for one specific purpose. Nothing was multi-purpose or adaptable. Their species evolved in a highly structured society, Olivia continued. Everything has exactly one purpose, defined by thousands of years of tradition. That's why our improvised weapons confuse them so much. The idea of using something for anything other than its intended purpose doesn't make sense to them. Captain Ryan Nelson listened with interest. He led a special operations team that had been fighting Varalians for 18 months. They had seen firsthand how the aliens struggled against unexpected tactics. So you're saying we should be even more unpredictable? Ryan asked. Olivia nodded. The more absurd our weapons seem to them, the more psychological impact they'll have. The Varalians aren't just confused by our improvised weapons, they're beginning to fear them. Ryan's team received a new mission: raid a Varalian outpost in the Amazon rainforest and test Dr. Wright's theory. The aliens had built a small base to study Earth's plant life, looking for useful biological compounds. Instead of bringing standard weapons or even the now common improvised tools like flour, bombs, Ryan's team gathered the most unlikely items they could find. Children's toys, sports equipment, and musical instruments filled their packs. Sergeant Denise Clark, the team's communications specialist, carried an electric guitar that had been modified by engineers. It looked strange among the military gear, but Denise had practiced with it for 2 weeks. The Varalians' neural systems are crystal-based, like most of their technology, the engineer had explained when giving her the modified guitar. This produces sound at frequencies that should disrupt their thinking patterns. It won't work on humans, but it should be very painful for them. Ryan's team approached the Varalian outpost at night. They watched as the crystalline aliens moved around their camp, working with perfect efficiency. Every alien knew its job and performed it exactly as trained. The team put their unusual plan into action. First, they used remote-controlled toy cars equipped with small speakers to create distractions around the camp perimeter. The toys zipped between trees, playing recorded animal sounds. The Varalians responded exactly as expected, sending guards to investigate in a perfect formation. They moved like machines, following standard procedure for checking unknown sounds. Next, the team used modified tennis ball launchers to fire water balloons filled with a mix of glitter, food coloring, and a sticky syrup. The balloons hit the ground near the alien guards and burst, covering the area with sparkling, colorful goo. The Varalians froze, completely confused by this attack. Their training had no protocol for being assaulted with glitter and syrup. While they hesitated, Ryan's team moved closer to the main facility. 3 elite Varalian guards protected the entrance to the research center. They wore advanced crystal armor and carried the aliens' most powerful handheld weapons. In a normal fight, they would be almost impossible to defeat. Sergeant Denise Clark stepped forward with her modified electric guitar. She began to play, not a song but a specific sequence of notes and chords that the engineers had calculated would produce the right frequencies. The effect on the Varalian guards was immediate and dramatic. They dropped their weapons and clutched at their crystal helmets. The sound wasn't loud to human ears, but to the crystal-based neural systems of the Varalians, it was unbearable. All 3 guards collapsed to the ground, unable to fight or even move properly. Ryan's team quickly secured them and entered the facility. Inside, they found research data about Earth's plants and several Varalian scientists. The aliens surrendered immediately when they saw what had happened to their guards. They couldn't understand how a musical instrument had defeated their best warriors. The raid was a complete success. Ryan's team captured valuable alien technology and research data without firing a single conventional weapon. More importantly, they proved that Dr. Wright's psychological approach worked. News of the music weapon spread quickly among the Varalians. Their military command began to receive disturbing reports from all fronts. Soldiers were refusing to engage with humans out of fear of what ordinary object might become their demise. Varalian Admiral Zextora called an emergency meeting of the War Council. The crystal-faced military leaders looked troubled as they reviewed the latest battle reports. Our forces report humans attacking with objects that make no tactical sense, one commander said. They use noise-making devices, colored powders, even objects meant for human offspring entertainment. Admiral Zextora's voice was sharp with frustration. How can we fight an enemy that doesn't follow the proper rules of warfare? This is chaos. An intelligence officer displayed images of human attacks. Our psychological analysis suggests the humans are deliberately using inappropriate objects as weapons to create fear among our troops. It is effective. For the first time since the war began, the Varalian leadership felt uncertain. Their superior technology and perfect military discipline weren't enough against an enemy that turned toys and musical instruments into weapons. Back on Earth, Dr. Olivia Wright and Captain Ryan Nelson presented their findings to the Defense Council. The room was filled with military leaders and representatives from the improvised warfare units. The Varalians are experiencing something they've never faced before, Olivia explained. Their society values order and proper function above all else. Our creative use of everyday objects as weapons doesn't just surprise them, it horrifies them on a deep cultural level. Ryan added, "My team has proven that the more unexpected our weapons are, the more psychological impact they have. The aliens were more afraid of Sergeant Clark's guitar than they would have been of a conventional weapon." The Defense Council approved an expansion of what they now called absurdity warfare. Special teams would use the most unlikely objects as weapons in raids against Varalian positions. Around the world, people contributed ideas and unusual items. A group of school teachers created lessons on how to turn classroom supplies into defensive tools. Toy makers worked with engineers to modify children's toys into communication jammers and distraction devices. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had found a true advantage. The Varalians still had better ships, stronger weapons, and more resources. But they couldn't understand or adapt to the human capacity for turning anything into a weapon. The war was still far from over, but a new hope spread among Earth's defenders. If the Varalians couldn't understand human creativity, perhaps they couldn't defeat it either. 3 years had passed since the Varalians first appeared in Earth's solar system. The war had reached a stalemate. Humans kept finding new ways to use everyday objects as weapons. The Varalians still had superior technology but were increasingly afraid to engage directly with the unpredictable humans. Admiral Zextora was under pressure from the Varalian High Command. They had expected Earth to fall quickly, but the war dragged on with no end in sight. The crystal-faced admiral decided it was time for a final decisive attack. "We will end this conflict with one massive assault," Zextora announced to the War Council. "We will deploy the Crystalline Devastator to attack their lunar colonies. Once those fall, Earth will have no choice but to surrender." The Crystalline Devastator was the pride of the Varalian fleet. It was larger than any other ship, with weapons powerful enough to crack a small planet. Its crystal hull was reinforced to withstand any conventional attack. It had never been defeated in battle. Earth's defense networks detected the massive ship as it approached the edge of the solar system. Emergency alarms sounded in military bases around the world. Colonel Patricia Winters, commander of the Lunar Defense Forces, called an emergency meeting. "The Devastator will reach the moon in 3 days," Patricia told her officers. "Our remaining military vessels are no match for it. If it destroys the lunar colonies, Earth will be next." The lunar colonies were home to over 50,000 people. They were also Earth's main source of helium-3 fuel and the launching point for what remained of the planet's space fleet. Losing the moon would be a devastating blow. Engineer Carlos Ramirez worked in the lunar garbage processing facility. He had been watching the growing crisis with concern. When he heard about the approaching Varalian flagship, he had an idea. It was crazy, even by the standards of the improvisational warfare that humans had been using. Carlos requested an urgent meeting with Colonel Winters. To his surprise, she agreed to see him immediately. "The lunar garbage cannon," Carlos said. As soon as he entered her office, Patricia looked confused. "What?" "The mass driver we use to launch processed waste back to Earth for recycling," Carlos explained quickly. "It's basically a giant electromagnetic cannon. We normally use it to shoot garbage containers on a trajectory to Earth's processing facilities." Understanding dawned on Patricia's face. "You want to use it as a weapon against the Devastator?" Carlos nodded eagerly. "Not just as a weapon, as the biggest improvised shotgun in human history." Within hours, the plan was approved. Every available person on the lunar colonies was put to work. They emptied the garbage processing facility and began collecting everything that wasn't essential: broken machinery, construction debris, old furniture, damaged equipment, anything solid that could be launched. "The Varalians expect us to use conventional weapons," Carlos explained to the workers. "Their shields are designed to stop energy, beams and missiles. They're not designed to handle thousands of random objects moving at extremely high speeds." The mass driver was a simple but powerful machine. It used electromagnetic fields to accelerate objects along a 3-mile track until they reached speeds high enough to escape the moon's gravity. It had been built to send containers of processed material to Earth, but Carlos and his team quickly modified it for their desperate plan. As the crystalline Devastator approached the moon, tension grew among the colonists. The massive alien ship was visible to the naked eye now, a shining crystal structure larger than anything humans had built in space. Colonel Patricia Winters gave the order to evacuate all non-essential personnel to the far side of the moon. Only Carlos and his team remained at the mass driver facility, making final preparations. "We'll only get one shot at this," Carlos told his team. "The mass driver will burn out after we fire. Make it count." They loaded the launch track with tons of compacted garbage, broken machinery, and industrial waste, metal fragments, ceramic pieces, plastic chunks, a chaotic mix of materials that no weapons engineer would ever consider using as ammunition. The Devastator moved into position above the main lunar colony, its weapon systems powered up, preparing to fire the first devastating blast. "Now," Patricia ordered over the radio. Carlos activated the mass driver at full power. The electromagnetic fields surged to maximum strength, far beyond their designed limits. The massive collection of garbage and debris shot down the launch track at incredible speed. The mass driver systems overheated instantly. Alarms blared as the facility began to shut down, but it was too late to stop what had been set in motion. Thousands of pieces of lunar garbage, broken equipment, and random debris erupted from the end of the mass driver like a giant shotgun blast. The cloud of objects moved at a significant fraction of light speed, crossing the distance to the Varalian flagship in seconds. On the bridge of the crystalline Devastator, alarms sounded as sensors detected objects approaching. The defensive officer looked confused. "It appears to be garbage?" the officer reported to the commander. The commander wasn't concerned. "Their primitive weapons cannot harm this ship. Continue with the attack plan." The Varalian shields were designed to handle energy weapons and explosive devices. They weren't configured to stop thousands of small, solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The cloud of debris tore through the shields as if they weren't there. The impact was catastrophic. Pieces of lunar garbage ripped through the crystal hull of the flagship, shattering critical systems and breaching the command center. Within moments, the mighty Devastator was crippled, its weapons offline and life support failing. From her command bunker, Colonel Patricia Winters watched the sensor displays in amazement. The most powerful ship in the Varalian fleet had been defeated by garbage. "Send the message to all Earth forces," she ordered. "Operation Trash Shot successful. The Devastator is disabled." Cheers erupted in command centers around the world. The story spread quickly. How the lunar colonists had turned their garbage disposal system into a weapon that crippled the invaders' most powerful warship. The remaining Varalian fleet retreated to the edge of the solar system. For the first time since the war began, they were on the defensive. Their seemingly invincible flagship had been defeated by the most unlikely weapon of all, literal trash. Engineer Carlos Ramirez became an instant hero. When asked about his inspiration, he smiled. "The Varalians think everything has one proper purpose," he explained to reporters. "They couldn't imagine a garbage launcher being used as a weapon. That's their weakness. Humans see possibilities where they see only fixed purposes." The turning point had come. Humanity had proven that with enough creativity, even the mightiest enemy could be defeated. The Varalians still had many ships and weapons, but their confidence was shattered. How could they fight an enemy that turned trash into a weapon powerful enough to defeat their greatest warship? The war wasn't over, but for the first time, humans believed they might actually win. 5 years had passed since the Varalians first appeared in Earth's solar system. The defeat of the crystalline Devastator marked a turning point in the war. Humanity had proven that even the most powerful alien technology could be overcome with creativity and improvisation. The Varalian fleet remained at the edge of the solar system, unwilling to risk further losses. Their military doctrine had no answer for humans who could turn coffee makers, children's toys, and literal garbage into effective weapons. Admiral Zexatora faced a difficult decision. The Varalian High Command demanded either victory or withdrawal. After years of fighting, the Admiral had developed a reluctant respect for human ingenuity. "We cannot defeat them through conventional warfare," Zexatora told the War Council. "Their creativity makes them unpredictable. We must either find a new approach or leave this system." For the first time in the long history of the Varalian Empire, a military leader suggested peace talks with a species they had attempted to conquer. Many council members objected, but the evidence was clear. The cost of continuing the war would be too high. On Earth, Admiral Nathan Blackwell received the unexpected message from the Varalian command ship. The aliens requested a meeting to discuss the possibility of peace. After 5 years of fighting, it seemed almost impossible. "Do we trust them?" asked Colonel Richard Benson during the emergency meeting of Earth's Defense Council. Admiral Blackwell considered the question carefully. "We don't need to trust them. We just need to talk to them. If they're asking for peace, it means they've realized they can't win through force." The Council agreed to the meeting. They chose Admiral Blackwell to represent Earth in the talks. He had commanded Earth's naval forces since the beginning of the war and understood both the military and political aspects of the conflict. The meeting was set for neutral territory, a small space station that humans had built in orbit around Mars before the war. Both sides agreed to bring only a small delegation and minimal weapons. As Admiral Blackwell prepared for the peace talks, he thought carefully about what to bring. The Varalians would expect documents, computers, and formal diplomatic tools. Blackwell decided to bring something much simpler. The day of the meeting arrived. The Varalian delegation arrived in a small crystal ship that docked with the Mars station. Admiral Zexatora led the alien group, accompanied by 3 advisors. Their crystal faces showed no emotion, but their body language suggested tension. Admiral Blackwell waited in the station's main conference room. He wore his formal uniform with all his medals. On the table in front of him lay a single item, an ordinary ballpoint pen. The Varalians entered the room cautiously. They had fought humans for 5 years and had learned to fear human creativity. Even now, at a peace meeting, they scanned the room for potential weapons. "Admiral Zexatora, Blackwell said, standing to greet the alien leader. Thank you for suggesting these talks. The Varalian admiral's crystal face caught the light as he nodded. The continuation of this conflict benefits neither of our species. They sat at opposite sides of the table. The Varalian advisors placed crystal data devices in front of them, ready to record the negotiations. Admiral Blackwell had only his pen. One of the Varalian advisors stared at the pen. Is that a weapon? He asked. Blackwell smiled slightly. It's a writing tool, but I suppose in human hands anything can become a weapon if necessary. That's what you've learned about us, isn't it? Admiral Zextora studied the human carefully. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. Our military doctrine had no answer for humans who used food preparation devices and waste disposal systems as weapons. The negotiations lasted for 3 days. The Varalians wanted guarantees that humans would not expand beyond their solar system for at least 50 years. Humans wanted assurances that the Varalian Empire would never threaten Earth again. Finally, they reached an agreement. The peace treaty included an unprecedented clause, a formal acknowledgement that human improvisation constituted a strategic military advantage that the Varalian Empire could not counter. This is unique in our history, Admiral Zextora admitted as they prepared to sign the final document. We have conquered 12 other species, but none showed your ability to see beyond the intended purpose of objects. Admiral Blackwell used his ballpoint pen to sign the treaty. Our greatest strength isn't our technology or our resources. It's our ability to adapt, to see new possibilities in the ordinary. The Varalian admiral pressed a crystal fingertip to the document, leaving a unique pattern that served as his signature. My superiors have authorized one additional proposal. We wish to establish cultural exchange programs. We want to learn this creative thinking that your species possesses naturally. Blackwell was surprised but pleased. You want us to teach your people how to use things in ways they weren't designed for? Yes, Zextora replied. This ability may be valuable beyond warfare. Our society has followed the same patterns for thousands of years. Perhaps it is time for innovation. The peace treaty was announced to both species. On Earth, people celebrated the end of 5 years of war. The Varalian ships began to leave the solar system, all except for a small diplomatic vessel that would remain as the first alien embassy to Earth. A month after the peace treaty was signed, the first Varalian ambassador arrived on Earth. Krivex was younger than most Varalians humans had encountered during the war. The ambassador seemed genuinely curious about human culture. During a formal reception at the United Nations, Krivex approached Admiral Blackwell with a question. How did humans develop this ability to see weapons in everyday objects? The ambassador asked. Is it something you are taught as offspring? Admiral Blackwell thought carefully before answering. It's not about seeing weapons everywhere. It's about understanding that function is not always fixed to form. Context changes purpose, and survival sometimes requires reimagining the world around you. Krivex seemed confused but interested. In our culture, each object has one correct use determined by tradition. The idea of using something differently is difficult for us. That's why we're going to teach your people, Blackwell replied. Not to make weapons, but to think creatively, to see possibilities rather than limitations. In the decades that followed, humanity expanded into the stars not as conquerors, but as teachers of innovation. The phrase "to think like a human" became shorthand throughout the galaxy for finding unexpected solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The Varalian Empire changed too. Their rigid society slowly began to embrace creativity and adaptation. In the Varalian Military Academy, every cadet now begins their training by disassembling and repurposing a standard-issue food preparation device, what humans would call a coffee maker. It serves as a reminder that understanding your enemy sometimes means understanding yourself. The Varalians had tried to conquer Earth because that was what they always did. They never considered that there might be other possibilities, other ways to interact with new species. Humans had taught them that anything can become something else when needed. Even enemies can become friends, given enough creativity and willingness to change.